The Adventures of Huckleberry Finn, Chapter 14. In this chapter, Huck seems to know what's going on. He reads a book to Jim, something Jim can't do, and tries to teach Jim life lessons. Jim in this chapter tries to prove to Huck he is smarter than him. He goes off on rants, expressing his ideas and saying he doesn't understand why people don't think the way that he does. For action. Huck and Jim find a number of valuables among the robber's bounty from the Walter Scott, mostly books, clothes, and cigars. As they relax in the woods and wait for nightfall before traveling again, Huck reads books from the wreck, and the two discuss what Huck calls their adventures. Jim says he doesn't enjoy adventures, as they could easily end in his death or capture. Huck astonishes Jim with stories of kings, first reading from books and then adding some of his own, made-up stories. Jim doesn't understand what a king is, and Huck tells them they are smart enough to get all the riches in the world. Jim doesn't understand because he has only heard of the story of King Solomon. In this story, two women claiming to be the mother of the same child ask the king for advice. The king, testing the woman, orders for the baby to be cut in half, saying they can share it. One lady speaks up, telling the king to give her baby to the other lady if it means saving the baby's life. The king then understands it's this lady who is a child's mother and gives that lady her baby. Jim doesn't understand Sullivan's motive and thinks there is no intelligence in cutting a baby in half. Huck tries to explain why he did it, but gives up after Jim's refusal to listen. Next, Huck tells him about Louis XII, Dauphin of France. However, Huck calls him the Dolphin of France. Louis is said to be roaming around the forest lost. Huck explains to Jim the reason he hasn't come home yet is because people can't help him because they don't understand French. This causes them to get into a fight about language. Jim argues that if dogs and cats can talk the same, why can't humans? This is a very valid point, but Huck doesn't see it, saying, "You just can't learn a nigga to argue." One important quote of this chapter is when Jim says, "Well, it's a blame ridiculous way, and I don't want to hear no more about it. They ain't no sense in it." And Huck responds, "Looky here, Jim, does a cat talk like we do?" Jim can't believe people speak different languages all over the world, since we are all the same. But if we are all the same, then why are some of us enslaved? And why doesn't he seem to make that conceptual leap? This quote is important because it makes the reader question Jim's character, who seems to have his life understood in this chapter. Another important quote is, "I told about Louis XVI that got his head cut off in France a long time ago, and about his little boy the Dolphin, that would have been a king, but they took and shut him up in jail, and some say he died there." The importance of this quote is Huck saying the word dolphin. He meant to say a dolphin in hair. He was trying to educate Jim on kings, but made a mistake as a teacher. The theme of this chapter is idiocy. Both characters are fighting to prove themselves as the smarter man, but mess up along the way. Huck reads stories to Jim and tells him about kings and such, but refuses to take into account Jim's logical reasoning behind language, and calls a dolphin a dolphin. And Jim, on the other hand, tells Huck about his knowledge on King Solomon and language, but refuses to understand why Solomon cut the baby in half. Although they both try to be intelligent, they contradict themselves throughout the chapter, showing idiocy. An intelligent person would know what they are talking about the whole time. One literary term in this chapter is irony. It is ironic how, although they are both trying to convince each other of their intelligence, Huck mistakes a dolphin for an animal, and Jim doesn't understand a simple story of how a true mother would rather save her child's life and give it up than let the child be killed. In this chapter, there is another case of foreshadowing. Jim and Huck argue over things as equal people. They both have their ideas, and sometimes they both listen, and sometimes they don't. This foreshadows to the end of the book how their relationship grows more into friendship. And lastly, another literary term is illusion. An illusion is a reference of something outside the literature itself. The story of King Solomon is an allusion into Huckleberry Finn, to help Jim tell Huck about his knowledge on kings, proving it's important in this certain chapter.